If a large percentage of the human race alive today has also lived in the past, then the evidence rests within each individual, in those areas of the personality beneath the ego. The only answer lies in self-investigation. Complicated technological paraphernalia will not help us explore the realities of the human personality. Welcome to the Reality Revolution. The question I have for you is, have you lived before? Is it possible that we have lived before? Many millions of human beings believe that we are born time and time again, that our human potentialities can never be fully developed in the brief span of one lifetime, but that they grow and mature through succeeding reincarnations. One great writer on this topic is Jane Roberts in her book, How to Develop Your ESP Power, in which she discusses her own experiences and those of others in utilizing hypnotic trance, and she asks questions through her channel, Seth, about the realities of reincarnation. I wanted to discuss a little bit of her insights and just reincarnation in general, and perhaps give you ways to recall past lives if you have lived them. Suppose for a moment that reincarnation is true. Our next question would be, if you have lived before, then why don't we remember our own past lives on a conscious basis? Let me ask you another question. You know for a fact that you were an infant and a child before you were an adult, yet how much of your own childhood do you remember consciously? Very little. The bulk of such memories are now part of the subconscious mind. If we cannot remember experiences that belong to this existence, it should not be surprising if memories of past lives are also repressed. Forgotten events from childhood can be recalled through hypnosis. If reincarnation is fact and not fiction, we should be able to recall past lives through hypnosis also. Even in this case, we wouldn't know if such memories were valid until we received enough solid information to check against existing historical records and public documents. As Roberts explains, as far as absolute proof is concerned, consider the difficulty involved in proving a simple fact that is not immediately demonstrable. Suppose you wish to prove that the boy who sat behind you in the 5th grade wore a brown suit on May 6, 1938. Imagine that this fact stayed fresh in your mind through all these years, though other memories vanished from your consciousness. You may know beyond doubt that the boy's suit was brown, but proving it would be most difficult. For one thing, records would not exist as to the color of the clothing worn by any of your classmates on any given day, unless there was a picture taken. And even if you tracked down the individual involved and questioned him, you would be no closer to proof. Now a man, the individual, would have no idea as to what sort of clothing he wore. If a black and white photograph had been taken, the question of the color of the boy's suit would still not be settled. Only a color photograph would suffice as evidence, and it would be necessary to prove without doubt the photograph had been taken on the day in question. If reincarnation is a fact, then the problems of collecting evidence will be overwhelming. Even if we take it for granted that the information received through hypnosis and other methods is correct, we would have to become involved in an effort to check this data through records, private letters, old newspapers, and numberless other sources. Even if we could prove beyond doubt that John X somehow had an intimate knowledge of the 17th century life of a particular bishop, for example, this would not necessarily be evidence that John X had once lived as that bishop. He could have collected such information subconsciously in some manner. He could somehow be in communication with the spirit of that bishop. Granted, these explanations would be as amazing as the reincarnation thesis. Nevertheless, if such detailed knowledge of the past was proven beyond doubt, they would then have to be considered. There are already cases on record where living persons insist that they have lived other lives. displayed intimate knowledge of the dead individuals involved, were confronted by the living relatives of the dead person and correctly identified the relatives, although they had been introduced as strangers. 2 such cases appeared in India in this century. It may be a coincidence that these were discovered in a country in which reincarnation is accepted, or it may be that such incidents are not ridiculed in India and therefore more apt to come to light. In these particular cases, memories that appear to be valid, previous life memories, were not buried in the subconscious but were at a conscious level. If reincarnation is a fact, however, as a rule, the ego would not be aware of it. This is one of the key points that Jane Roberts teaches in recalling past lives, is that the primary thing that is blocking you from remembering or understanding past lives is the ego. Theoretically, any previous life recollection could be brought to the surface by a method which would relax the conscious ego sufficiently so that the inner data could make itself known. Hypnotism should prove the most effective method of uncovering such information. Automatic writing may be another. Simple word association could be useful. There are also cases on record in which memories that seemed to be of previous life origin were uncovered during psychoanalytic sessions. It is true that most scientific investigations into ESP are not concerned with reincarnation, since the subject is often implied in any study of mediums. However, it is of great interest in connection with psychic phenomena and therefore is a legitimate area of discussion. Automatic writings, automatic speech, and spirit controls often claim to originate with reincarnated personalities. This does not necessarily mean that reincarnated personalities are, in fact, involved, but any investigation must at least take the possibility into consideration. No one can tell you if you've lived before. If a large percentage of the human race alive today has also lived in the past, then the evidence rests within each individual, in those areas of the personality beneath the ego. The only answer lies in self-investigation. Complicated technological paraphernalia will not help us explore the realities of the human personality. Whatever answers may be possible will be found only through exploration of the inner self. Later, I want to include instructions for an experiment that will allow you to achieve the freedom necessary to search for the existence in yourself of any previous life memories. I've had some amazing experiences in QHHT sessions, both as a hypnotist and as the one being hypnotized. I've had some amazing experiences at home and with a therapist in recalling past lives on this planet and on other planets. I have walked away from some of those sessions not believing a word of what I heard, and I've walked away from other sessions feeling very connected to them. Jane Roberts includes a transcript of a hypnosis session with her husband, and she, as the hypnotist, the subject was put into a deep trance state through induced relaxation, and the following suggestion was then given. As odd as this sounds, when I count to 8, you will see scenes from a time before you were Robert Butts. This was repeated several times, and then the count from 1 to 8 was given. The questions were, "What do you see?" He said, "A puddle." "What is your name?" He said, "Josie." She asked, "How old are you?" He said, "I'm 5, I'm playing." "What are you doing?" He said, "Playing around a horse." "Whose horse?" "Some man's." She asked, "Where do you live?" "In a city." She then asked, "What city?" "Maryland." "And do you live in a house?" He said, "Yes." "And what is your last name?" "Williams." "And do you have brothers and sisters?" She said, 5. "What does your daddy do?" "He shoes horses." "Do you know the name of the city in Maryland?" "No." "What is the name of the city in which you live?" "Maryland." When I count to 8, you will be 10 years old. This suggestion was given several times, and then the count was given. Then she asked her husband, "What is your name?" "Joe." "Joe or Josie?" Joe answers impatiently. "Are you a boy or a girl?" "I'm a boy." Subject sounds disgusted. "Where do you live?" "I'm in a stable." In a stable, yes. Horseshoes. There's hammering on the horseshoes. Do you have brothers and sisters? He said 4. Previously, the answer 5 was given to this question. Whose stable is it? My father's. Here, again, the subject sounded disgusted at my lack of knowledge. Tell me about it. Sparks on the hot shoes, the sledgehammers, sparks and flies, the door is open. What is the street? The smell of horses and straw. What kind of street? Oh, it's a stone street. And then she asked, what is the name of the town? Maryland. What is the name of the street? Spencer Street. Do you live there? Yes, next door, upstairs. This session was held initially to relieve the subject of annoying back symptoms. In this, it was successful not only in minimizing the pain involved, but in helping the subject to understand many of the inner reasons that brought about the condition. We had not planned to attempt any regression experiences of the kind described. When I discovered that the subject was in excellent trance state, however, I decided to turn the session into those channels after first checking with the subject. Because this was our first experience, it suffers from several flaws. For one thing, the subject was not given sufficient time to answer questions. He saw and felt much more than I gave him the opportunity to describe. Many questions should have been followed up, but the session lasted an hour and a half as it was, and I did not want to prolong it. She goes on to say that many obvious questions were neglected for this reason, such as the all-important matter of the year of Joe's birth and the country in which Maryland was a city. At the time, I took it for granted that Maryland was the state and that the subject was confused. Actually, such a supposition has no place in this kind of session. Also, it may be advantageous to count backward rather than forward, as the backward count would be more suggestive of going back in time. The experience was very vivid for the subject. The sensual data was fresh and immediate. The tone of his voice was a convincing portrayal of a child's. He became quite impatient with me several times. I had taken it for granted that Josie, the name given at the age of 5, was a female name. Later, when the subject used the name Joe, he was very cross with me for asking if he was a male or female. The session showed us that these experiences of the subjects were as vivid as those in more ordinary age regression. In ordinary age regression, the actual early events are relived rather than simply recalled, and in this session, Robert felt that the events were happening in fact. The session was recorded. We had just purchased our recorder, however, and I was not too familiar with the operation. The subject's voice is fairly clear. Unfortunately, the traffic outside is fairly clear also. Before we go on to our own experiment, it may be interesting here to see what Seth had to say about Robert's hypnosis session. So she goes and asks Seth if the information that he had pulled up in his session was true, because Seth had knowledge of Robert's previous lives. So you don't have to necessarily believe this, but she's trying to use Seth to confirm the details. Here we find the Seth material adding to the data received through hypnosis as Seth adds details to the life supposedly lived by Robert in the Joe Williams existence. The following is a brief excerpt. Steep steps led to your house at that time. Your wife's name, I believe, when you grew was Nell Brownell. Your name was Williams. You met Rupert in Boston in this country after an absence from him. You did have 5 children in the family. That is, you had 2 brothers and 3 sisters, one sister dying before you were grown. Maryland was not in this country. You came here to Boston. Maryland is a city. It is not a state in your country. Records may possibly be found in Boston. Your mother's name at the time was Josephine. You were then slim and disciplined to some degree, ending up with 4 children and a wife who became an invalid. Your occupation was that of an Episcopal clergyman. There was a church of brick in a neighborhood at first pleasant, then deteriorating. An old mansion across the street was turned into a grocery store. There was later a dress shop nearby. From the 3rd-story window front, you could see the water. You were ordained under peculiar circumstances, not being educated in orthodox terms. When you migrated to Boston, you took the name of Drake. I do not know the first name. You were young when you migrated, and the ship was 3 days late. Smallpox broke out in the hold. A captain took you under his wing. You did not sign on as you should, and you were discovered, but you reminded him of a nephew, last name Phillips, and he protected you. You also had 1 illegitimate child. Please understand that we are not claiming that Joe Williams' existence happened in fact. We are claiming that it is possible that through hypnosis, Robert did actually reach memories of a past life in which he was Joe Williams. We do know that this experience was vivid to him as more ordinary age regression experiences through hypnosis, and psychologists are quite willing to accept age regression. Their own experiments show, for example, that when a subject says he is 5 years old, he then performs on the psychological tests as a 5-year-old. Until we accumulate much more information on the Joe Williams existence, all we have is some highly evocative material. Our own time is also limited, and reincarnation is only one of the subjects in which we are interested. Jane Roberts is making an important point that I continually come back to, and that is, you may be accessing the memories of someone who lived in the past through communication with their spirit, or in the Akashic record, you simply have the memories of that person, but it is not you that lived that life. We can also take the Joseph Murphy perspective that we are reincarnated. Everyone is our reincarnation because we are all one. We have access to the memories of everyone that ever lived, and so we have reincarnated from all of them. The following experiment will allow you to explore the usually inaccessible areas of your own personality for the existence of any possible previous life memories. I do not suggest that you hypnotize anyone else or allow yourself to be hypnotized unless you obtain a good background knowledge of hypnosis through reading and study. This experiment will involve self-hypnosis. Again, if reincarnation is a fact, it is very possible that hypnosis can lead us to recover some of these lost memories, in the same way that it can allow us to recover forgotten incidents from childhood. However, unless we're willing to accept such information on faith, we cannot just take it for granted that the material is valid. We must make every attempt to check it against existing records and documents. In order to check the validity of such data, it is obvious that the information must be collected, and from the subconscious personality, since the conscious mind is aware of only a fraction of the past experiences at any given time. Hypnosis is the best method of reaching the subconscious that we know. To begin the experiment, then put yourself in a light trance state. These are the instructions, and I'll put together a small guided meditation at the end that you can follow. But first, sit in a comfortable chair or lie down on the bed. Close your eyes. Begin with your feet and relax all your muscles. Speaking aloud or mentally, tell yourself that you will completely relax. Listen to the words in your mind. Suggestion is marvelously effective in inducing relaxation. You will find that you actually are letting down. Progress through all the muscles going up the calf, thigh, abdominal area, hips, back up to the waist, through the body to the spinal cord, and up the neck. Imagine the relaxation spreading over the shoulders, down to the arms, to the elbows and hands, down to your fingertips. Then imagine this relaxation spreading up from the neck and shoulders to the throat, jaw, facial muscles, over the brow and scalp. And as you continue, you'll feel the tension and nervousness leave your body. In the beginning, this process may take about 20 minutes. It may take more or less time depending on your abilities of concentration. Later, you'll be able to get the same results merely by suggesting to yourself that you can do so. Whenever you use self-hypnosis, be sure to tell yourself that you will snap out of the state whenever you choose or at the count of 3. Now, before the session, write down suggestions for use after self-induction. After you put yourself into a trance state, these suggestions can then be read to you by someone else. If you own a tape recorder, you can dispense with the other person if you desire. Pre-tape the suggestions and then play them back. For that matter, you can pre-tape a self-induction, following earlier instructions, and tape the whole session. You can then hear your own voice later with the changing inflections that you may use. You will respond to the taped voice as you would to any voice, regardless of the source. During the first few sessions, deal with the simple age regression in this life alone. This will build up your own confidence and is a fascinating experience. You'll be astonished at the extent of your own subconscious memories. Many of these can be checked with your own relatives. After putting yourself in the trance state, either have another person give you the following suggestions or play the pre-taped suggestion on your recorder. I'm going to count backwards from 10 to 0. When the count is completed, you will be 15 years old. Repeat the suggestion several times. Count slowly backwards. Suggest that only pleasant episodes will be remembered. At the end of the count, the following questions can then be asked. Again, these can be pre-taped or given by another person, which I will do at the end. So how old are you? Where are you? Who is with you? What year is it? The questioning will be far easier and more flexible if questions are asked by another person. Pre-recorded questions cannot take your answers into account. Questions should follow naturally from the answers that are given. Therefore, if you find yourself in a classroom at age 15, the person who is asking the questions can use this as a springboard to ask you the name of the teacher and to request that you identify some of your classmates. Unless the session is being recorded, you need someone with you in any case to take notes. Above all, do not rush. Make sure that you have all the time you want to answer each question before going on to the next. When the episode at 15 seems completed, then the above procedure should be repeated, and suggestions given that on repeat of the count you will be 5 years old. Again, suggest that only pleasant episodes will be remembered. The whole procedure may then be followed through, this time regressing you to the age of 1 year. I suggest that you take 2 or 3 separate sessions for the experiments thus far. Obviously, questions should be varied according to the age to which you have regressed. I will include an excerpt from one of the Jane Roberts age regression sessions, and you will quickly see the sort of questions that are appropriate. Unless you carry on intensive investigations over a period of years, do not specifically suggest that possible previous birth or death experiences can be recalled. It should be mentioned again that events in age regression will not be remembered but actually relived with all the sensual data that was present in the original experience. The following is part of an age regression session, again with Jane Roberts' husband as subject and Jane Roberts as the hypnotist. You can use the format for your own experiments. You can, of course, return to any age. The designations 15, 5, and 1 are merely suggestions on my part. Question: how old are you? 3. What day is it? Tuesday. Where are you? In my room. What do you see? The floor and window. And what else? Trees, street, outside window. And where's your mother? She must be downstairs. Do you have any brothers? 1. Are you happy? I don't know, I'm alone. Now you will let the scene fade. You let the scene fade and you count backwards again from 10 to 0. At the end of the count, you will be 2 years old. Suggestion was repeated several times, and the count given. How old are you? I'm 2. Where are you? I'm on the grass. Is it summer? Yes. Nice day. I crawl under the bench. With the feet, black pants. They're sitting over me. Who? I do not know. I think I hear my mother. In a backyard? Yes. What do you call your mother? Mother. Long and drawn out. What do you call father? Daddy. Same long drawn out sounds. She then removed the scene from his mind, suggesting at the next giving of the count he would be 1 year old. And then he said, I'm 1. Where are you? Bathroom. What are you doing? In the water. In a tub? No, something like it, on stilts. Is someone washing you? Yes, my mother. What do you call her? Mama. Can you see the room? Pictures on the wall, paper. What does your mother look like? Brown hair, small front tooth. Again, the subject felt that he was not given sufficient time to describe what he saw and felt at the time. For example, he actually felt his mother's arms around him. The immediacy of such experiences is obviously quite different from the second-hand feelings connected with the incidents that are consciously recalled. The age regression sessions are only a part of this experiment. However, when you practice with age regression and are familiar with the sensations involved, then proceed with your attempts to uncover subconscious memories of a possible previous life. After self-induction, have another person give you the usual age regression suggestions. This time, however, go from the present to a very early age, say 1 or 6 months. Have a brief question and answer, then have the other person give you the following suggestion. I'm going to count backwards from 10 to 0. Now, as odds as this might seem, when the count is finished, you will see scenes from a time before you were, and then you give their present name. Repeat the suggestion, give the count of 10, and then proceed. Some initial general questions can be, what do you see? Where are you? How old are you? In what country are you? What is the year and what is your name? Roberts purposely placed the questions of identity at the end of the list. This enables you to get your bearings before dealing with another identity and makes the transition easier. If you maintain that you're an adult, then you can ask, are you married? What is your husband or wife's name? Do you belong to any organization? Which one? Who is president, king, or ruler of your country? What is your occupation? What are your parents' names? From what country did your parents come? Do you read a daily newspaper? Which one? You cannot rush this experiment. Take time to get full answers. If you maintain that you're a child, then obviously the above questions cannot be asked. Questions suitable to the age should be substituted. A child, for example, may or may not know the kind of government under which he lives. If further information is desired, suggestions may be given so that the regular counting procedure, the age of the personality, will be advanced to adulthood. So you can see here that the process is very interactive with a good hypnotist. You can generally do some self-hypnosis, and it will guide you up to a certain point. But it helps, even in QHHT sessions, to have some feedback. They can work on your answers. The person who helps you in this experiment must be someone you can trust. Husband and wife teams work well. The relationship is a good one. Along with your self-induction, always include the suggestion that you will come out of the trance whenever you choose, at the count of 3 or at a specified time. This puts the control in your own hands and on any sense of uneasiness. You may end the trance. Always make sure, however, that you are returned to your present identity and the present age. This is done as follows. Instruct the person with whom you are working to give these suggestions if you seem at all tense. Now I'm going to count from 1 to 10. When the count is completed, you will be back in the present time. The suggestion should be repeated and then the count should be given. This is very little possibility that you would refuse to make the transition to your present personality. Such a situation is so improbable that it need not concern us. Nevertheless, no session of this kind should be ended without including the suggestion given above. When the count has been given, you should then be asked your name and age, and the session should not be ended until you correctly give your present age and identity. This procedure should also be followed to end an ordinary age regression session also. It is a good idea to insert in your trance induction the suggestion that you will be refreshed and relaxed at the end of the session. Careful records should be kept at all times. When the work of collecting information in this matter results in the accumulation of data, then it is important that it be checked against public records, old courthouse files. This is obviously a difficult and time-consuming procedure, but we cannot just take it for granted that our information is correct. If names and dates and locations do check out against historical documents, then you'll be closer to some kind of scientific proof. It must be restated that while we can get through hypnosis material that seems to be of a previous life origin, we must then try to discover if this information is what it appears to be or if it is merely subconscious play acting. The psychologists themselves do not know enough about either mind or hypnosis to say categorically that all such apparent memories are subconscious fabricating. But I doubt if you find any who would say they are from previous lives either. Now, while hypnotism is an excellent method of trying to uncover such material, automatic writing or automatic speech are other methods. We've discussed automatic writing. When used for this purpose, simply suggest at the start that your subconscious will use your hand to express itself on the subject. You've already had some success with automatic writing since beginning this. It is possible that this method will prove effective for you. Use the procedure given previously. Those of you who are experimented with automatic speech may find yourselves giving material concerning reincarnation. If so, check your material against itself. Ask the same question several times or have someone else ask them and see if you get the same answers. Make up a list of questions and have them read aloud to you when you are delivering a session. Any such data received through the Ouija board should also be studied. Jane Roberts was a big believer in the Ouija board, and she used the Ouija board to initially connect with Seth, which is why some people think that Seth is some sort of demon or negative entity, and they've related that directly to the Ouija board. If reincarnation does exist, then there must be some sort of retention of knowledge and identity to connect one existence to another. Otherwise, at least to me, the whole theory would be meaningless. The continuity of self would not necessarily have to be conscious, but in one way or another, it would have to be a part of our individuality. Psychologically speaking, some allowances would have to be made. This could be taken care of through what Seth calls the inner ego, a conscious inner counterpart of the ego with which we are familiar in daily life. The subconscious, according to this theory, acts as a buffer zone between the inner and outer ego. The inner ego contains memory of our previous lives and acts as an overall director of activities. The subconscious sifts some information through from the inner ego, the inner self, to the outer ego. In practical terms, each ego is conscious, but the outer ego is not aware of the inner ego. Memories of past lives would not be handled by the outer ego, simply because this ego is too concerned with daily life in a physical reality to deal with extra information. The outer ego does not even concern itself with previous memories from this life. The idea of inner and outer egos is somewhat similar to the concept of secondary personalities held by psychologists. It is also rather simple to find an analogy from everyday life to explain it in easily understood terms. As you yourself take on a variety of roles now as parent, mate, community member, and social individual, and still remain on the same person in similar fashion, the inner ego would take on reincarnational roles and still retain identity and direction. At times in your role as breadwinner, you may forget your role as social individual or as a mate, and then pick it up again at the end of the day when you return home from work. In the same manner, you would largely lose sight of other reincarnation roles while concentrated on the one in progress. According to Seth, consciousness is the direction in which the self looks. According to this theory, blocking of communication between the inner and outer ego may be strong enough to handle such inhibited information, and indeed may actually need it to survive in a universe which now seems to demand all its resources and knowledge. It is possible that we have blocked out previous life memories in a series of self-induced hypnotic blind spots, even as in normal existence we see only what we want to see and block out other stimuli. If this is the case, then we should expect to find some clues that would at least hint at the existence of past lives, clues that we have either ignored or misinterpreted. Do we have any such clues? Can the theory of reincarnation give any logical answers to questions that have tantalized the mind of man for centuries? Questions for which we have several possible answers, but none that seem truly adequate. How many times have you felt an instant like or dislike for a particular individual upon meeting him for the first time? Psychology explains this reaction in several ways. For one thing, we react in the present according to our past experiences, which is partially based upon subconscious and illogical preferences or prejudices. For example, a favorite uncle may have smoked a particular brand of cigar years ago in your childhood. You may then be predisposed to like men who smoke that particular brand of cigar in the present without ever realizing the connection. This is a simplified version of the way in which we actually do form prejudices and preferences. It is possible to carry this further, however, and it is just as logical actually to suppose that we sometimes take instant likes and dislikes to various persons because we have known them in past lives. We might also feel a desire to make up to a personality for wrongs we might have done him in a previous existence without ever consciously being aware of either the past life or the incident involved. Reincarnation is also interesting as a theory when it is considered along with personality tendencies and those unique interests and quirks that characterize us all. The reincarnation theory offers an excellent explanation for the existence of geniuses and child prodigies. Talents and achievements from one life would not be lost. When a child shows great gifts early in his development, gifts that a child would not normally display. These could be the result of knowledge and ability gained in a past existence. There is an engaging economy in this concept. A small but consistent hobby in painting might result in a very real artistic talent in the next life, for example. No ability would be lost and no action meaningless. A sense of continuity and identity would not be consciously available to us, obviously under most circumstances, but instead would operate as the psychic framework in which our present personalities continue their existence. In much the same manner, the child you were is alive but hardly conscious in your adult self. The child that you were is not dead. He has become something else, the adult personality. He was not a thing but a becoming. You cannot find the child that you were in any physical place, yet to some extent, you are still the child that you were, even though you have only a glimmering of conscious memories that serve to connect you with him. In the same fashion, the personality that you were in a past life may not be dead altogether. It may exist within you as the child does, intangible but vital, part of a psychic framework that contains and forms your present identity. We know too little about too many things to discount such a possibility as foolish or meaningless. We do not know enough about the human personality as it exists in the present to be able to say what it was or was not in the past. Even our idea of time itself is changing. Is it possible that in dreams we see glimpses of our past environments, streets, and places that we knew in previous lives? We do know that in dreams we visit places that we knew as children. To all intents and purposes, we walk down streets known to the children we once were, even though the children and the streets may still exist in physical terms no longer. When this is taken into consideration, it does not seem too unlikely, after all, that dreams could also bring us glimpses of possible past life experience. Do you often return to the same locations in dreams? Locations with which you are not familiar in waking life? These could be scenes which were once as much a part of your daily life as the street on which you now live. It is at least conceivable that the house which you now call home could turn up in dreams in some future life to become one of the recurring dream locations that seem so strange and alien. In Jane Roberts' discussion with Seth, he talks about how this affects sex, and personal debts can uniquely affect us. Alright, so using these instructions from Jane Roberts, we'll do a little experiment. You can expand on this by recording your own sort of self-hypnosis or doing automatic writing in the future. So find a place just to relax and let go of the outside world for a few moments. Take a deep breath and begin to relax your body, letting go of your ego and all you identify with. Relax your feet, your calves, relax your shins. Allow this relaxation to spread to your knees, your thighs and quadriceps, your hamstrings, and through your hips and stomach, relaxing your chest and back, letting your shoulders down. Feels so good to let go for a few moments, relaxing your forearms, biceps and triceps, your hands, sinking into your chair and floating at the same time. Relaxing your neck, all the muscles in your face, your jaw, tongue, your forehead, your eyes. Continue to relax. If you're still tense, pause it now and just get as relaxed as you can. Now, to begin, I will count from 8 to 1. You will see scenes from when you were 1 year old. I will count from 8 to 1 and you will see scenes from when you were 1 year old. Once again, I will count from 8 to 1 and you will see scenes from when you were 1 year old. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Now what do you see? Do you know your name? How old are you? What are you doing? Can you see where you live? Now, letting go of this image, I will again count from 8 to 1. And as odd as this sounds, when I count from 8 to 1, you will see scenes from a time before you were in this life, in a previous life, before you were who you are now. Once again, when I count from 8 to 1, you will see scenes from a time before you were who you are now, in a previous life. To repeat this suggestion, when I count from 8 to 1, you will see scenes from a previous life. You will only see pleasant scenes. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. How old are you? What do you see? What is your name? What are you doing? Now, when I count from 8 to 1, you will be an adult in a previous life. These will only be pleasant memories. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. What do you see? Where are you? How old are you? In what country are you? What is the year? What is your name? Are you married? What is your husband or wife's name? Do you belong to any organizations? Which ones? Who is president, king, or ruler of your country? What is your occupation? What are your parents' names? From what country did your parents come? Do you read a daily newspaper? Which one? Explore this past life. Now I will count from 1 to 10. When I get to 10, you will be back in the present moment. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You are now back in the present moment, fully conscious and fully aware. See, it's that simple. You can slowly develop your own method of recalling these past memories and lives. As advised by Jane Roberts, you should definitely spend some time just remembering when you were a kid, when you were younger. So this is sort of an adumbration. In my own experience in doing QHHT sessions, this can go on for hours and hours, and it gets more intense as you do it. This is only a brief sampling, and so I recommend that you find a practitioner or a friend that is willing to do this with you, and you can find some amazing information. I would love it if anybody found verifiable information, if they could put it in the comments. If you realize a name or year or date or some specific information that you can go and confirm, then I would love if you could do that. So let me know. In any case, the question is, have we lived before? That is a question we may be able to prove on some level, at least by getting verifiable information, that we have access to this information of past lives. But I believe we can never truly prove it. It's only an experiential sort of situation. Through meditation, through your guidance, through whatever ways that you communicate, you may be able to access this information at some point. You can find all episodes of The Reality Revolution at therealityrevolution.com. And welcome to The Reality Revolution.